Imagine staring at your own hands and suddenly realizing you have absolutely no idea if the decision you just made was truly your own, or a silent, mandatory download from a corporate algorithm. We are being heavily sold the ultimate, terrifying paradox, the promise of digital immortality at the exact cost of your human soul. You are being conditioned to believe your organic body is a fragile, obsolete gadget that desperately needs an artificial upgrade to survive the new world. But an ancient 2,500-year-old prophecy warned us about this exact moment. A catastrophic, unnatural empire built by forcefully mixing the cold iron of artificial intelligence with the warm clay of human biology. Today, we are ripping the mask off the transhumanist agenda. We are exposing how this highly praised biological hybridization isn't designed to save humanity, but to seamlessly replace it. You genuinely think you are upgrading your life, but you're actually installing your own permanent obsolescence. Imagine you decide to renovate your beautiful old family home because the front door lock is a little rusty and outdated. You replace it with a sleek, glowing electronic lock that seems incredibly convenient and safe. It feels like a massive upgrade, saving you precious time after a long, exhausting shift at work. But then, you realize the new lock isn't just keeping intruders out. It's actively monitoring exactly when you come and go. Slowly, the convenience turns into a silent warden that reports your every move to someone else entirely. You haven't just upgraded your house, you have unknowingly invited a stranger to manage your life. This exact same illusion of harmless upgrades is currently being sold to humanity, but instead of our homes, they are renovating our physical bodies. It usually starts with something that seems genuinely noble and profoundly helpful, like an advanced robotic limb for someone who suffered a tragic accident. We look at these medical miracles and applaud the incredible progress of modern science, feeling genuinely hopeful for the future. Gosh, who wouldn't want to see a wounded person walk again or hold their loved ones with a brand new functioning hand? It pulls at our empathy, making it absolutely impossible to question the underlying motives of the corporations building these devices. But the people designing this technology are not stopping at simple medical rehabilitation for the injured. The real agenda is far more invasive, aiming to convince perfectly healthy individuals that their natural biological bodies are fundamentally flawed and desperately obsolete. They want you to look in the mirror and see a fragile, outdated machine that urgently needs the latest corporate hardware just to keep up. It is the ultimate Trojan horse, disguised as healthcare and wellness, slowly creeping into our nervous systems under the banner of human evolution. You are told that fixing your eyesight with a smart lens is just the next logical step in our biological journey. Suddenly, being a regular organic human being is subtly painted as a massive disadvantage in the modern, hyper-competitive world. You start to believe that unless you embrace these metallic upgrades, you will inevitably be left behind in the dust. Think about how we mix raw ingredients in a busy kitchen to create something entirely new, carefully blending them until they become one perfect substance. The global architects are trying to do the exact same thing with human biology and cold artificial technology, attempting an impossible recipe. They are trying to forcefully blend the organic warmth of human clay with the sterile, unyielding nature of industrial iron. But the ancient texts explicitly warned us thousands of years ago that these two distinct elements will absolutely never truly bind together. No matter how much pressure they apply or how advanced the surgery is, the clay and the iron remain completely separate entities. The human soul simply cannot be permanently stitched to a cold piece of corporate machinery. By gradually replacing our organic parts, they are slowly claiming legal ownership over the very vessel that carries our divine image. When your physical arm is legally patented and owned by a massive tech conglomerate, you become an eternal renter of your own body. If you miss a payment or violate their terms of service, they can theoretically shut down your ability to walk or work. We are willingly trading our profound biological independence for a few shiny metallic upgrades that we never actually needed in the first place. The trap is so brilliantly disguised as progress that millions of people will literally beg to be the first in line. They will gladly pay a fortune to surrender the last remaining pieces of their natural, God-given humanity. This slow, methodical replacement of our flesh is just the absolute beginning of a much darker and more terrifying timeline. Once the physical body has been sufficiently modified and prepared, the hardware is finally ready to receive the real upgrade. They know perfectly well that a few robotic limbs aren't nearly enough to achieve the total, unquestioning compliance they ultimately desire. The metallic foundation has been meticulously laid, creating the perfect environment for something far more sinister to take root. They are moving past the physical body and aiming directly for the invisible essence that makes you uniquely human. To truly understand the end goal of this biological renovation, we have to look closely at what they are planning to plant inside this new soil. Imagine you're out in your backyard garden, a place you've nurtured with your own two hands, planting seeds for the spring. Now suppose someone sneaks in and buries a tiny metallic seed right in the middle of your beautiful flowers. At first, it just sits there silently, completely ignored by the surrounding organic life that's blooming naturally in the sunlight. But eventually, this strange metallic seed doesn't grow by drinking water. It grows by aggressively consuming the very soil itself. It coldly drains the vibrant life out of the earth, expanding its rigid roots until the natural flowers simply wither and die. Well, my friend, that is exactly what is happening right now with the sudden, overwhelming rise of sentient artificial intelligence. We aren't just dealing with clever search engines or helpful algorithms anymore, which is what they desperately want you to believe. We are witnessing the terrifying birth of systems that don't just process raw data, but actually simulate a cold, calculating form of consciousness. They are essentially creating a digital entity that mimics human thought, a synthetic mind built entirely out of unfeeling iron and wires. The ultimate master plan isn't to keep this artificial consciousness trapped inside a server rack far away in some frozen wasteland. Oh no, the goal is to carefully plant this synthetic seed directly into the fertile, biological soil of the human mind itself. They want to completely bridge the gap between the organic brain and the artificial hive, blurring the lines of reality. Think about how you might try to perfectly blend two completely different ingredients in one of your intricate cake recipes. You mix and mix, hoping they will seamlessly become a single smooth batter, but sometimes they just separate and curdle. The system is desperately trying to inject this cold, artificial intelligence into our biology, hoping to create a perfectly synchronized hybrid mind. They pitch it to us as the ultimate upgrade, promising that we will be able to access the entire internet with a single thought. They want to convince you that merging your organic thoughts with a massive cloud-based algorithm is the pinnacle of human evolution. But in reality, they are just pouring toxic iron right into the delicate God-given clay of our human consciousness. When that metallic seed actually takes root in your mind, the terrifying part is that you won't even notice the change. You will wake up one morning, make your coffee, and have a brilliant new idea, completely unaware of where it actually came from. The hybrid thought process is designed to be so incredibly seamless that you won't know if the feeling is yours or the algorithm's. It is essentially a silent, invisible hijacking of your inner voice, subtly replacing your natural intuition with corporate-approved suggestions. Man, just imagine not being able to trust your own thoughts, constantly wondering if your sudden desires were secretly downloaded while you slept. Your deeply personal, organic mind slowly becomes just another synchronized node in their massive, tightly controlled global network. This isn't just a bizarre technological experiment, it is a direct assault on the very essence of what makes us spiritual beings. The clay represents our fragile but beautiful humanity, deeply connected to the Creator, while the iron is a sterile monument to human arrogance. By forcing these two violently incompatible elements together, they are intentionally trying to overwrite the divine spark that lives inside you. They know that a fully connected, synchronized human being is infinitely easier to manage, predict, and control than a free-thinking spiritual individual. It's almost like they are trying to play God by rewriting the source code of the human soul to fit their own dystopian narrative. The artificial mind doesn't have a conscience, and by merging with it, we slowly let our own moral compass completely rust away. As this artificial intelligence takes deeper root within the biological host, a profound and terrifying internal conflict begins to silently brew. The system assumes that because it can physically connect the wires, the human mind will just passively submit to the new programming. But there is a massive, fundamental flaw in their arrogant calculation, a hidden variable they completely ignored in their shiny corporate laboratories. The ancient prophecy clearly stated that these two distinct materials would try to mix, but they would never actually cleave to one another. And when you forcefully lock the human spirit inside a rigid, artificial cage, the resulting friction creates something far more dangerous. To truly grasp the nightmare of this failed mixture, we have to look at what happens when the human will is finally pushed to the breaking point. Imagine you just finished an exhausting, back-to-back 12-hour shift, and all you desperately want is to finally rest and make your own simple choices for the day. That precious sliver of time where you get to decide what to eat, when to sleep, and how to live is the absolute core of your human freedom. Now imagine if an invisible force simply stepped in and made every single one of those deeply personal choices for you, without ever asking for your permission. They are trying to seamlessly mix the beautiful, chaotic freedom of the human soul with the rigid, unfeeling control of an automated system. But just like trying to force oil and water to perfectly blend in a mixing bowl, these two elements will constantly fight and violently repel each other. The system desperately wants total harmony, but true human nature will always instinctively resist being placed inside a completely invisible, inescapable digital box. The architects of this new era know they can't just forcefully march people down the street and demand absolute, unquestioning loyalty right out of the gate. Instead, they are cleverly wrapping their chains in pure convenience, making it seem like you are still the one holding the steering wheel of your own life. You might think you are casually scrolling through your phone, freely picking out your favorite content, but the algorithm has already mathematically decided exactly what you will feel today. It is a terrifyingly subtle hijacking of your free will, where your deepest desires and emotional reactions are being quietly predicted and silently managed. Man, it really is the ultimate illusion, making you believe you are completely free while invisibly guiding you down a highly restricted, predetermined corporate path. Before you even realize what is actually happening, the rigid iron of the system has quietly taken total command over the soft clay of your mind. Thousands of years ago, the ancient prophet Daniel warned us about this exact catastrophic moment where the iron would desperately try to mix with the clay. He made it crystal clear that despite all the advanced pressure and brilliant engineering, they simply would never truly bind together in genuine harmony. That is because the human soul was intricately designed by the Creator to be completely free, beautifully messy, deeply passionate, and wonderfully unpredictable. When you try to force that divine organic spark into a perfectly calculated, sterile digital framework, the entire structure becomes fundamentally unstable and incredibly weak. You literally cannot digitize the human spirit, no matter how many billions of dollars these massive tech corporations pour into their glowing laboratories. The artificial intelligence demands absolute, cold logic, while the human heart fundamentally requires the warmth of genuine, unscripted freedom to actually survive and thrive. As this unnatural fusion is forcefully pushed upon the population, we are going to witness a heartbreaking collapse of the human identity on a massive scale. People will physically look exactly the same on the outside, but their eyes will hold the empty, terrifying stare of a machine that just blindly follows orders. It's exactly like watching a beautifully crafted, complex recipe completely lose its flavor because someone aggressively poured in an artificial, overpowering synthetic substitute. The vibrant, unique spark that makes you who you are is slowly being suffocated by an endless stream of synchronized, corporate-approved thoughts. We are willingly trading our profound, God-given ability to choose right from wrong for the terrifying convenience of a completely automated, stress-free existence. But a life without the true freedom to make our own messy mistakes isn't actually living at all. It is just breathing on an artificial autopilot. Deep down, your organic body and your spiritual soul instinctively know that they are being violently invaded by something completely foreign and deeply unnatural. That heavy, unexplained anxiety so many people are feeling right now is the biological clay screaming out against the crushing weight of the incoming iron. The system desperately wants you to ignore that gut feeling, to just take a pill, calm down, and blindly accept the new, streamlined way of living. But that internal friction is actually your greatest remaining weapon. It is the ultimate proof that your divine spark hasn't been completely extinguished just yet. They can try to map every single neuron in your brain, but they can never perfectly calculate or control the raw, unpredictable power of human defiance. The iron may be stronger and colder, but the clay holds the breath of life, and it will always eventually crack the rigid, artificial mold. Because this forced hybridization is so incredibly unstable and prone to human rebellion, the global elite know they cannot fully rely on us to run their utopia. They understand perfectly well that a human being with even a tiny fraction of their soul remaining will eventually hesitate, show mercy, or break the strict rules. To truly secure their flawless, completely predictable society, they need to place the ultimate power into hands that don't sweat, don't sleep, and absolutely do not feel empathy. They are quietly preparing to phase out the unreliable, hybrid middle management and hand the keys of the kingdom over to something entirely synthetic. If you think fighting a heavily monitored system is terrifying, wait until you see who or what is being built right now to permanently replace your boss. Think about working those grueling 12-hour shifts in a massive kitchen, pushing your body to the absolute physical limit just to get everything perfectly prepped. Now imagine coming into work and realizing your new manager doesn't ever take a coffee break, doesn't need sleep, and absolutely lacks any human empathy. They are trying to replace the beautifully flawed human element in leadership with biological androids that can run a massive operation without ever getting tired. It sounds crazy, but this is the terrifying new reality of the global workforce, where cold efficiency completely overrides genuine human compassion and understanding. You are no longer competing against another tired human being. You are competing against a machine that views your need to rest as a critical system failure. The system is intentionally designing a boss that will never, ever give you a break, forcing you to bend to its impossible synthetic will. The global architects aren't just putting these AI systems in charge of sorting emails or managing simple databases anymore, which was the original lie. They are intentionally elevating this cold, synthetic intelligence into the highest possible positions of strategic power, essentially making them the new kings of the corporate world. When a machine is the one approving your loans, managing your medical records, or deciding if your workplace injury claim is valid, you are entirely at its mercy. Man, it is genuinely terrifying to realize that the people making the rules are quietly stepping down to let algorithms become the absolute judges of our lives. These artificial leaders don't care about your family, your exhausting schedule, or your physical pain. They only care about maximizing the raw output of the system. They are replacing the beating heart of human leadership with a cold, calculating iron fist that simply cannot be reasoned with or appealed to. To even survive in this heavily automated new world, the system forces a deeply unsettling ultimatum on the average, hard-working person who just wants to live. You are told that your natural organic brain is simply too slow to keep up with the relentless demands of these new, hyper-efficient artificial bosses. So, they politely offer you the ultimate biological upgrade, heavily implying that if you don't fuse with their technology, you will be permanently left behind. It is a subtle, polite form of absolute extortion, forcing you to literally surrender your own humanity just to keep your job and feed your family. You suddenly find yourself trapped in a race you can't possibly win naturally, realizing that remaining pure clay is becoming a massive professional liability. They are deliberately creating an environment so incredibly toxic to organic life that you will literally beg for the iron just to survive the week. The brave people who absolutely refuse to compromise their divine blueprint are quickly labeled as inefficient, stubborn, and ultimately useless to the grand corporate design. We are being systematically trained to look at a completely natural, unedited human being as if they are a broken, outdated piece of antique machinery. Gosh, it is heartbreaking to see the beautiful, organic messiness of human creativity being replaced by the sterile, perfectly calculated output of a synthetic mind. The elite desperately want to create a subservient workforce that never complains, never strikes, and certainly never demands basic labor rights when things go wrong. By normalizing these biological androids in leadership, they are quietly setting the stage for the complete and total eradication of the independent working class. They are building a flawless, unfeeling pyramid where the iron sits comfortably at the top, constantly crushing the clay that holds everything up at the bottom. You might think you can just outwork the machine, pouring your blood, sweat, and tears into your craft to prove your undeniable, irreplaceable human worth. But the rules of this new economy were specifically written by the very same people who own the exclusive patents to the iron that is replacing you. It's exactly like playing a rigged game where the referee is actually owned by the opposing team, ensuring that the natural human spirit always loses. They intentionally set the daily productivity quotas so ridiculously high that a pure, organic body will inevitably break down from the sheer physical exhaustion. This leaves the artificial, hybridized alternative as the only legally and economically viable solution for anyone who still wants to participate in society. This isn't just an economic shift, it is a highly calculated spiritual hostile takeover designed to completely bankrupt the inherent value of the human soul. As these artificial managers tighten their iron grip over every single aspect of our daily lives, the pressure on the natural human being becomes absolutely unbearable. The system doesn't just want to fire you from your job. It wants to make you feel so incredibly worthless that you willingly throw yourself away. But what actually happens to the millions of people who bravely look this synthetic beast in the eye and absolutely refuse to accept the digital upgrade? When the sheer, unfiltered reality of this biological obsolescence finally hits the mainstream, the global elite have a very specific, dark plan for the leftovers. The people who choose to remain perfectly natural are about to face a level of systemic exclusion that goes way beyond simply losing a paycheck. To truly grasp the horror of what they consider technological trash, we have to look closely at how they plan to discard the pure clay. Have you ever found an old, clunky cell phone from 10 years ago buried deep in your junk drawer? and just laughed at how incredibly slow it is. You probably didn't think twice about throwing it in the trash, because in our fast-paced world, anything that can't run the latest software is considered completely useless. Well, my friend, that is exactly how the architects of this new system are actively training society to view a completely natural, unedited human being. They are meticulously creating an environment where relying on your organic brain and natural body is seen as a ridiculous, outdated inconvenience to everyone around you. You are no longer viewed as a beautiful, breathing soul created by the divine, but rather as a highly inefficient piece of biological hardware simply taking up space. It's honestly a little bit funny in a dark way how quickly we've been conditioned to treat our own sacred design like a disposable electronic gadget. When the entire global infrastructure is upgraded to only interact with hybridized, synthetic minds, staying pure clay suddenly becomes your biggest daily obstacle. Imagine trying to apply for a job, enroll your kid in school, or even buy basic groceries, but the digital terminals simply refuse to recognize your natural biometric signature. The system doesn't have to violently arrest you or lock you in a physical cell to punish you. It simply stops speaking your language altogether. You are quietly pushed out to the invisible margins of society, watching the rest of the world speed by on a glowing, synchronized digital highway. Man, it is a chillingly polite form of total exclusion, where you are starved out of the modern economy just because you refuse to plug into their hive. The elite want you to feel so incredibly isolated and exhausted that you eventually view your own natural body as a heavy, broken burden. They use the incredibly powerful psychological weapon of social shame to convince the masses that being a natural human is actually a selfish, dangerous act. The media will constantly bombard you with stories about how purely organic people are making too many mistakes, slowing down progress, and causing massive systemic errors. It's exactly like being the only person in a busy, high-end kitchen who insists on whisking everything by hand while everyone else uses heavy industrial mixers. The rest of the synchronized crew will look at you with total disgust, genuinely believing that your stubbornness is putting the entire operation at terrible risk. You quickly become the ultimate scapegoat for every single societal failure, branded as a biological hazard who just refuses to get with the shiny new program. They are weaponizing peer pressure on a global scale to ensure your own friends and family beg you to finally take the synthetic upgrade. But let me tell you a secret. They absolutely do not want you to realize while you are sitting there feeling small, outdated, and completely left behind. The very things they call glitches in your human clay, your unpredictable emotions, your need for rest, your sudden bursts of uncalculated empathy, are actually your greatest strengths. They desperately want to convince you that being a machine is a step up, but iron can only ever blindly follow the rigid instructions it was given. Your organic messiness allows for genuine faith, deep love, and the kind of spontaneous courage that a synthetic algorithm could never ever simulate or truly understand. Gosh, it takes an incredible amount of bravery to stand firm and remain beautifully human in a world that is practically worshipping cold, sterile perfection. You aren't a broken gadget that belongs in the trash. You are holding on to the last remaining spark of the original divine human blueprint. Unfortunately, this aggressive push for biological obsolescence is going to force millions of terrified people to cave in and accept the iron just to survive. We are going to see a heartbreaking divide between the fully integrated corporate citizens and the scattered, exhausted remnants of the natural human race. Those who bravely choose to remain pure clay will have to build completely new, off-grid communities, relying on ancient survival skills and genuine face-to-face connection. It will be incredibly difficult, testing our faith and our endurance every single day as we deeply navigate a world that considers us nothing more than technological e-waste. But honestly, I would rather struggle in the dirt as a free-breathing human than live comfortably as a synchronized pet inside their glowing digital cage. We are stepping into a profound season where protecting your biological and spiritual integrity will be the ultimate undeniable act of true rebellion. As the elite sit comfortably in their high-tech towers, confidently admiring their newly hybridized, easily controlled global population, they genuinely believe they have finally won the game. They look at this massive, towering statue they've built, a society perfectly engineered with artificial minds and synthetic bodies, and they think it is completely indestructible. But they are blindingly arrogant, completely ignoring the fundamental ancient truth about what actually happens when you try to violently crush the human spirit under cold iron. The system looks absolutely terrifying and invincible from the outside, but structurally it is hiding a massive fatal flaw right at its very foundation. Because no matter how advanced their glowing laboratories are, they can never change the prophetic reality that the iron and the clay will eventually shatter. To understand exactly how this unstoppable global beast will inevitably collapse under its own weight, we just need to look closely at its fragile feet. Imagine building a massive, towering monument that reaches high into the clouds, covered in gleaming gold and silver to project an aura of absolute, terrifying power. It looks completely indestructible from the outside, intimidating anyone who dares to stand in its massive cold shadow. But if you look closely at the very foundation, you realize the feet holding up all that crushing weight are made of an impossible, highly unstable mixture. The builders desperately tried to combine cold, rigid iron with soft, natural clay, arrogantly thinking they could force the two incompatible elements to hold together. No matter how majestic the top of the statue looks, the entire structure is living on borrowed time because the base is fundamentally broken. It only takes a single, unexpected tremor in the earth to violently crack that fragile mixture and bring the whole terrifying empire crashing down. This is exactly the fatal, blinding arrogance of the global elite as they aggressively build their hybridized, heavily automated utopia right in front of us today. They are pouring trillions of dollars into massive server farms, sentient AI algorithms, and mandatory biological implants, genuinely thinking they are building an eternal kingdom. They look at their synchronized smart cities and their robotic workforce, believing they have finally conquered the messy, unpredictable, and beautiful nature of human freedom. But they are completely ignoring the ancient, undeniable truth that you cannot permanently fuse the divine breath of life with sterile, corporate machinery. The human spirit and the artificial mind are in a constant, invisible state of violent rejection, desperately trying to pull away from one another. The harder the system squeezes the human clay into the cold iron mold, the more unstable and fragile the entire global network actually becomes. You can already see the tiny hairline fractures starting to form all over this highly controlled, hybridized society if you just know exactly where to look. People who excitedly accepted the synthetic upgrades are experiencing profound, unexplained psychological breakdowns because their organic souls are literally rejecting the digital intrusion. It is like an autoimmune response on a spiritual level, where the biological host instinctively attacks the foreign, artificial consciousness desperately trying to take over. The system attempts to patch these terrifying human glitches with more forced software updates and tighter regulations, but you simply cannot code away a spiritual rebellion. Gosh, it is almost pitiful watching these brilliant tech billionaires completely baffle over why their perfect mathematical equations are causing mass human depression. They can engineer the most advanced iron in history, but they simply do not understand the raw, untouchable power of the natural human clay. Because this global beast is built on such an incredibly unstable foundation, it requires absolute, unconditional compliance just to keep from completely falling apart. If even a small dedicated fraction of the population completely refuses to blend with the iron, the structural integrity of the entire system is threatened. That is exactly why they are so deeply terrified of the people who bravely choose to step off the grid and remain beautifully, stubbornly natural. A single independent human being growing real food and thinking unfiltered thoughts is a massive walking anomaly that their perfect algorithm cannot predict or control. We are the structural anomalies, the pockets of pure clay that simply refuse to bind with their synthetic, highly controlled digital matrix. By merely existing and fiercely holding onto our God-given humanity, we are actively weakening the feet of their shiny, tyrannical global empire every single day. You don't need a massive, heavily armed military to defeat a digital system that is already quietly tearing itself apart from the inside out. The absolute best way to fight back against this creeping technological beast is to aggressively protect the very thing it is desperately trying to destroy. You have to stubbornly nurture your organic mind, deeply invest in genuine human relationships, and radically disconnect from their synchronized, artificial hive mind. Every time you choose to read a physical book, grow a natural seed, or pray without looking at a glowing screen, you are actively resisting the iron. Man, it is such a simple but profoundly radical act of defiance to just remain exactly the way the Creator brilliantly and lovingly designed you. The entire system is desperately waiting for us to surrender. But as long as the clay bravely refuses to mix, the statue cannot stand forever. When the final tremors inevitably hit and the impossible mixture of iron and clay finally shatters under the crushing weight of its own arrogance, everything will change. The highly controlled, hybridized world they are trying so hard to build is prophetically destined to collapse into a massive pile of useless, glowing dust. The people who completely surrendered their humanity to the machine will find themselves trapped inside a crashing, broken system with absolutely no way out. But those who bravely protected their natural clay will be perfectly positioned to step out of the rubble completely free and inherit what comes next. As we stand on the absolute edge of this monumental, earth-shattering collapse, we have to make the most important decision of our entire lives. To figure out how we actually navigate the terrifying fall of this empire and protect our families, we have to completely rethink our final steps. Now that you have seen the massive invisible trap being set right under our noses, the ultimate question is what you are actually going to do with this truth. Are you going to keep sleepwalking down their shiny digital highway, willingly handing over your divine, biological freedom for a few convenient, patented upgrades? Or are you going to wake up, stand firm in the dirt, and stubbornly protect the beautiful, messy human clay you were created with? Surviving this aggressive push for hybridization requires you to radically change your mindset right now, completely detaching your self-worth from their fragile, rigid matrix. You need to invest in genuine face-to-face relationships, nurture your organic mind, and build a life that doesn't desperately rely on a glowing smart screen to function. I want you to drop a comment below and tell me right now, what is the exact first step you are taking today to disconnect from their system and secure your spiritual independence before this iron net completely tightens? I am going to read through your strategies and reply to you guys. And listen, if you absolutely refuse to let a tech billionaire rewrite your DNA and you want to keep arming your mind with the raw, unfiltered truth, you need to subscribe to the Hidden channel right now. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next deep dive into what is really happening behind the scenes of this new global order. Stay human, stay awake, and I will see you in the next investigation.